Welcome to Season 8 of Radio Free 501c, brought to you by Rogue Tulips Consulting. Don't forget to subscribe or follow us. We're in Season 8 and we still have a lot to talk about. Radio Free 501c is supported by USAE News, the weekly community newspaper of Association CVBs and hotels. Learn more at usaenews.com. We're kicking off Season 8 with a returning guest. We haven't talked with her for a while. It's Cynthia Lockrey. She's a communications expert. We're talking about why AI cannot replace people skills. Don't miss this one. It's January 12th, 2026. Welcome to episode 312. Hey everybody, happy 2026 and welcome to the first episode of Season 8 of Radio Free 501c, one of the longer running nonprofit management focused podcasts on the planet. I'm your host, Cecilia Sepp. I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips Consulting, and I am so glad to be here with you for another year of interesting people, different voices, and sometimes intense conversation about the topics of the day affecting the nonprofit management community. I also want to thank USAE News, who is now our supporter for every single episode. So if you are not familiar with USAE News, check out their website, usaenews.com. Now, today, I am so glad to be kicking off our new year and new season with a returning guest, Cynthia Lockrey. Cynthia has not been on the podcast for quite a while, so I'm so happy to welcome her back. Our topic today is why artificial intelligence, also known as AI, cannot replace people skills. But before we dive into that topic, Cynthia, welcome back. It's been so great catching up with you. Would you like to say hello to the audience and tell us a little about yourself?
Yes, thank you. It is so great to be back. I'm Cynthia Lockrey from Lockrey Communications. So what I do, and this ties in, is I'm a corporate trainer, a keynote speaker, and I do public relations. The thread I do is helping people communicate with confidence and understand how to work with different personalities, how to have those challenging conversations, and how to communicate clearly. So lots of different ways that shows up with me. And because of that, AI creeps in, but I'm very strong believer that we need to ground ourselves in our people skills.
Yes, well, and that is a great way to kick off this conversation because, as you know, with your experience as a communications focused consultant and popular speaker, you know that we're all using artificial intelligence in a lot of different ways. But what a lot of people are using AI tools for is communication. So, what are some of the, I'll just call them bad habits you've identified recently with communicating with AI tools?
So one thing, I actually heard somebody say this, and as a public relations consultant, I cringed, is they said, I haven't written an email in 2 years. I just dump whatever I want into Chat GTP, it spits it out, I cut and paste, and I send it. And alarm bells are going off in my head because we are human beings. We have different personalities. We have different interests. We have different ways of communicating. We have different ways of receiving information. And when you dump a bunch of stuff in Chat GTP, it might be easier because you've ticked that thing off your list. But how is it resonating with the person that's receiving it? I mean, we know when we're getting something that's AI versus when you and I email each other, I'll say, how you doing? I've been busy. You can see the human element. And when we're using AI so much that we're missing the human element, I'm telling you now, guaranteed, it's not connecting at the other end. And it can put up barriers. While you're saving time, you actually are making it more intensive because that person isn't getting that human connection that we all need.
Well, and we all need it, we all desire it, we all want it. But what I've been seeing happen a lot with all technology, now, I guess most of it is driven by AI at this point, but a lot of technology is that we're building barriers between ourselves. I used to be so excited about communication technology, like Zoom. You and I are talking in real time across at least 4 time zones, one end of North America to the other. I love that. I still remember the first time I sent a fax to Australia at my first job here in the Washington, D.C. area. And I realized, wow, a copy of this is coming out right now on the other side of the world. And I thought that was so cool. And we could do these things like online communities. But now what I'm seeing is we are using it not to talk to each other. We're using it to stay isolated. And these are all choices we're making as people, as individuals. And then people being human beings are pack animals. Let's face it, we run it with a herd. When I say a pack, I don't mean carrying a lot of stuff, although I'm sure we all carry a lot of emotional baggage with us all the time. But just as herd animals, we go with the group. And a lot of what we do is because we don't want to be outside that group. So I see a lot of that just, buried in the layers of the decisions we are making. So when you're looking at that and somebody says to your horror, which I probably would have gasped as well, if somebody said they had not actually written an email for 2 years, what kind of advice might you give a person about that so that they do change their ways about how they communicate?
Well, I think we need to come all the way back. We need to get back grounded, get back to the foundations of how we interact with each other as humans. And so it's funny, in the last 2 years, the workshops I'm doing that are way more popular now, one of them is called Communicating for Success, which is how you communicate with different personalities. And that one, people are calling about like crazy because they're understanding these challenges we're having in the workplace and the world is because I'm so grounded in my beliefs or my way of communicating that I'm not understanding those around me. So, I've worked with organizations that say, well, we all took the personality test. We know about that. And I'm like, but how did you use that? Because too often I go online, I take a personality test and I go, me. Oh, that's me. That's so me. Yeah. But what we need to know more is how, as an extrovert feeler, do I communicate with somebody who's an introvert who wants a lot of data and details? How do I show up in a conversation? How do I prepare? Sending that email, if I dump it in chat GTP, it's not understanding the needs of the recipient. And too often when we stay in our little comfort zone, we're communicating one way and one way only. And yes, it might resonate with some people who are a similar personality, but it's going to, as you said, put up barriers with different personalities. So I say we just hit pause, we take that moment, and we figure out how, as a human, can I connect with others, and how do I need to change how I communicate so I meet the needs of others. And when we meet somebody where they're at, we can kind of dance back to the middle. But if I come over and try to drag you, you're going to run in the other direction.
Mhm. That is so true. And somebody I used to work with said, wow, the power of the phone call. Right. Pick up the phone. Now, I heard a news story a few years ago. You may have heard it too, Cynthia, where some younger generations see a phone call as an act of aggression. I guess they feel you're intruding on their space or something. But I see it as an opportunity to really have a conversation with somebody instead of going back and forth on email.
Yeah.
Okay, personal share here. I have gotten to the point I really don't like email anymore. I use
Mhm.
it because especially if I'm sharing documents and things like that. And it also seems to be just like the way we talk for business a lot. But I love a text, send me a text because I don't have to worry about filing it, deleting it, or whatever. But finding out those ways, like you said, pick up the phone or, just ask somebody the power of the question. Ask somebody, how do you like to be contacted? How do you like to communicate? what time of the day do you like to communicate? I have another friend who has on her signature block, my work hours might be different than yours. So I'm sending this at a time that may not be convenient for you or something like that, and it's like, that's great because she's acknowledging, oh, I might be working at 2 o'clock in the morning. That doesn't mean you are, and I'm not expecting you to respond immediately. So those sort of relationship understandings, I think, are getting lost in the shuffle. Now, I really, as I was getting ready for this episode, I thought I've got to ask Cynthia her opinion on this. As a communication expert and a person who's been writing about AI, uh, what do you think about companies that use AI bots for customer service?
Oh, I scream at them as myself. I mean, again, they have their place, but I shouldn't have to dig 35 levels to find a phone number to talk to a human being because, I mean, we've all done this, right? There's something I need that no AI bot is answering because it's a weird question. And
Mhm.
it just says, was that helpful? Yes or no? And you just keep hitting no. And I think this is what we're doing when we use AI for social media posts. We've seen people and organizations that are AIing their social media. When we rely too much on bots, is what it does is it turns people away. And this is why some of these small businesses are really starting to flourish because you can go in, talk to someone, have a conversation, and people, I find, especially coming out of COVID, are really craving that one-on-one, that personal connection, because we spent too much time in COVID
Mhm.
not being able to connect. And now but because of it, people are kind of flopping their way around and trying to find their way.
Mhm. And I think that is such an excellent point. I am kind of getting to the point post lockdown because it's been now 5 years, really, because the lockdown kind of lasted 2020, 2021. And then we had some cautionary restrictions for some time after that. But, I got to say, we got to quit blaming the lockdown for everything because when we were allowed to just kind of go back outside and just interact in a more normal way, and when I say normal, being able to go out of your house, being able to go to an office, being able to go to a restaurant, doing what made you comfortable as you went out. But we can't keep blaming the lockdown. I think it did inflict a pretty serious mental and emotional wound on the entire population of the world because so many people weren't ready for it. And I often say to people, I looked at the lockdown as my Emily Dickinson period because she was known as the recluse of Amherst. And that's Amherst, Massachusetts, if you're not sure which one I'm talking about, because she just kind of lived a quiet life by herself most of her adult life. So I kind of looked at it as a quiet time to reflect and introspection, and I still connected with a lot of people virtually. So when people started saying to me, "Oh, I'm just freaking out working at home," I had to go back to, almost 20 years to when I first started working at home and find my compassion again because I realized, you know what? Not everybody had an office space at home. Not everybody had good internet at home. Not everybody had a computer at home because they were going to the office and that's where all that stuff was. So when I thought about it again from that perspective, like, oh, okay, I get it now. This is why it's so hard for people. And I think a lot of that human consideration was just wiped away the longer we were in the lockdown. I
Mhm.
think a lot of organizations did take the opportunity to go virtual, which, hey, I'm not against virtual work. I've been doing it for a very long time now, about 23 years. I've been working virtually and I love it. I did realize I wasn't going out very much because, and I mean, after the lockdown, I should say, I wasn't going out very much because I had gotten used to being at home. And frankly, it's way more comfortable sometimes. I have a friend who's like, I don't even want to go anywhere now. She's like, I work virtually. I'm happy to stay home. And it's like, inertia sets in.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's happened here with AI. I think we have hit an inertia point with how we're using it, the dread that we're creating. And I think you probably realize this too as a communication consultant, that mindset that we have when we're talking to people, we're creating messaging, how we're getting to know people is so important. So have you seen anything or do you have any advice about shifting your mindset to be, if not more positive, at least more objective about how we're using AI?
I think that we have to, you remember when social media came in? It
Mhm.
was a whack-a-mole how some organizations were saying no social media. It's, this Facebook's a waste of time. It's going to die out. And other organizations were just randomly posting things that made no sense. And even now in 2026, there's still some organizations, and I work with some, that don't even have guidelines on how to use social media. What's your brand voice? What are we trying to accomplish? Why are we on this platform? Why are we choosing Facebook and not TikTok? And all of this, we need to have some structure. We need to have some thought. I don't like policies and procedures because they're very rigid and it's hard to update, and technology is changing so quickly. So I think organizations need to also take a moment and say, what is our guidelines for using AI? So one thing that, I had this conversation with a colleague the other day, and she hadn't even thought about this. So you hear people say, I actually had a colleague, I was speaking at a conference for communication professionals, and a communication consultant says, "Oh, I love Chat GTP. I recently had this issues management somebody contacted me for to write a press release, and I cut and pasted all the stuff and I dumped it into Chat GTP, and it spewed me out a press release that I could use as a starting point." And the privacy issues. So I don't think people understand when they dump information into an open system, they dump people's names, they dump personal information, they dump things that hasn't gone public and it may never go public. You've put it in a public realm. So do your staff. I don't think a lot of staff understand how AI works. And I think you as a leader need to say, what are the parameters? Because we cannot say no. Facebook is taken over. The organizations that said no had to chase it, and they're still trying to catch up. So it's here to stay, but how do we use it? What are the values of our organization? Why are we here? How do we use this? And what are the risks? And educate your staff. Don't put out guidelines and go, here, there you go. Give some workshops, have some talks, have some webinars, help people understand the risks with AI of putting that information and the opportunities.
That's right. And I well said, first of all, let me add that. Well said, because we do need to educate people as to the why of why we're doing these things. And that's why my friend Cheryl Rock often says people support that which they help create. So
Yes.
working with your team to create those guidelines is another great way to do it as well. Or write the guidelines, show them to them and say, what do you think? Give me some input. Is this practical? I
Mhm.
also think we don't need to be everywhere on social media, to your point. I mean, there's so many social media channels out there now, and who's got time for it? And also, I mean, that's kind of how I look at it. It's like I really just do not have time to sit there and read Instagram all day or whatever. I only use a few channels. I use Facebook, I post on Instagram and LinkedIn, and then some online communities for organizations I belong to. But that's about it. I don't sit around reading them all the time. And was on a networking call a few months ago where somebody on the call was kind of frustrated and kind of feeling down. They're like, "Oh, all this stuff on social media is making me really feel down and sad and a little depressed." And I just said very bluntly, "Well, maybe you're spending too much time on social media. Maybe you should spend your time doing something else." And they kind of laughed and said, "Oh, maybe you're right." But that's kind of my point, is like, we choose how we use things, we choose where we spend our time. So, how we use AI is just as important as using it. And I think a lot of people feel this pressure. I don't know why humans always do this to ourselves. We create social pressure that doesn't need to exist. And maybe it's all a hangover from the cliques in high school. I don't know. But we put the social pressure on each other. You got to use it. You got to use it. You got to use it. You don't have a choice. Well, actually, we all have a choice and we don't have to use it. And we can also decide how to use it. What is the best way to use it? Now, the blog post that you wrote about AI is not going to replace human skills, people skills. You mentioned a couple of professions where their training is not training where you talk to other people a lot, like accountants. And I know IT people don't get that kind of training all the time. So, what are some of the observations you have about those kind of professions that are very trained in a specific area and a lot of times they're working on their own?
So we're really quick to criticize people when they struggle with people skills, communications, interpersonal, but like you said, the accountant, the engineer, the planner, they didn't go to school. It wasn't their core curriculum to learn how to deliver a presentation or how to work with, a different personality. And this is why, if I'm struggling with Excel, which 100% I struggle with, an employer will put me on an Excel course like that, and they won't even think twice. But when someone struggles with communicating clearly or navigating difficult conversations or presentation skills, we just criticize.
Mhm.
What's wrong with them? And so this is where I say, again, take that step back. How are we supporting our teams to build those people skills and not do whack-a-mole, but be strategic? Okay, what do we need to do first? Maybe, yeah, we need to do something on strengthening working with different personalities. I try not to do conflict resolution courses because I believe we need to understand how to communicate clearly so we don't have the conflict. Why wait until we have this conflict? And conflict resolution courses had their heyday, and I'm like, and I will still discuss that in a personality, but let's learn how to interact. And I feel that some organizations, because I'm busy now, I'm busier than I've been with my speaking and training, have started to realize that, but others are still in that, management versus leadership role and criticism versus growth.
Oh, wow. That is such an excellent point about let's all criticize instead of trying to help somebody be a better communicator and understand what they need to do. But also, I love what you just said about let's not even have the conflict in the first place. Let's prevent the problem before it happens. And that is really, you made me think of the old Benjamin Franklin quote about an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Right.
And it also, like, how many times have we heard at nonprofit organizations, and a lot of times in the association specific nonprofit segment, about, well, we don't have time to do that. We don't have time to do board training. That was the one that really got me because years ago, I think it was back in 2018, I posted on social media, I think maybe the IRS should require 1 hour of board training every month because it would improve board performance and help them better understand the role. I cannot believe the amount of pushback I got. Oh, we don't have time for that, or my board is fine. And it's just like, but you say you don't have time to train them and educate them and let them have a better experience, but you always have the time to clean up the mess that's created by not doing that good training and that good education. And now today, fast forward to 2026, in 2025, I was part of a working group that ended up producing a paper on the future of association boards. And that paper was supported by a company called Remembers, and the leader of that group was Jeff DeCania. And I was a big part of the conversations with the whole group. There were a lot of us involved in it. And now, what are we all saying? We need to educate the board. It's like the reflex now. Oh, we have a problem. We need to do better board education. So many other things go into that, though, because what you've pointed out today, Cynthia, about relationship management, building those relationships, making sure those situations exist for us to have those conversations is really important, and making sure that people understand what they're getting into. And, talking about boards is a whole other can of worms. But talking about that education, creating that, or as they used to say in the old West, let's head them off at the pass, right? Let's stop it before it gets too far. And I think that's really an important thing too. So as you're looking to the future of AI tools and communication, do you have any predictions about what you see happening with it?
I think you're going to see a split in organizations really quickly. You're going to see the organizations that want to bury their heads in the sand and are going to be left behind. And then they're going to be chasing it, like the organizations that said Facebook was a fad. We don't have time for Facebook, And so the ones that are going to be ahead of the game, I originally was anti using chat GTP or any AI. And my business coach said, well, you're an idiot then, because you're going to be left behind. You're going to be left in the dust. You need to get on board or know that you're going to be left behind. And so I would say what I'm what I'm expecting is those who are proactive, who take the time to understand the tools, like any new tool in business, understand the tools, figure out how it works for your organization, put some of those guidelines, like you said, have those conversations with staff. Those ones are going to be the leaders. The ones that just let staff do it without having any guidelines, don't have a clue, or say no AI at all, are going to, because this technology is moving so fast that if you don't figure it out now, you're going to be so far behind the game. So this is what I definitely am predicting, is that we're going to see this real, here and here mentality, and people chasing the game while others are leading it. So you get to decide in 2026, where are you going to be? Are you going to decide in 2027, 2028, you need to do something about it? And now you're really behind. Or are you going to say, let's figure this out? It's going to be messy. It's going to be challenging. It's going to take time, but it's going to take way more time to chase this a year from now.
And that's really great advice. I have one of the rules I live by is you have to live in the world you're in. And this is the world we're in. So we need to understand it. We need to know what's going on. We need to know what these tools are and how people are using them. That doesn't mean we have to use them the same way. And it doesn't mean we have to use all of the tools. And technology is evolutionary. And people seem to forget that because people love to be in a panic. We love drama, right? It's like we don't want to read a story about Cynthia Lockrey had a really great day and enjoyed a cup of cappuccino at the end of a job well done. That doesn't make the front page. If Cynthia Lockrey was like in a car crash, that would make the front page, right? Oh, that's drama. It's so dramatic. It's attention getting. So people love to get wound up about stuff. And I think back, because I'm old enough to remember this, when we first had social media, and when we had broadcast fax, everybody thought that was great. Are you kidding me? I could send this fax once. It goes to 300 people. Yes. Well, that's basically what social media is. You send the message once and everybody can read it. Everybody panic. What are we going to do? What are we going to, oh my God, it's terrible. It is like, it's really not, if you understand how it works and what you can do with it. And I think there's probably a lot of social media tools that have fallen by the wayside. I know in these 8 years I've been doing the podcast, a lot of podcast services have closed because that's what happens. The market adjusts, it shifts, it shakes things out. Some new ones come along, but you have to make room in the world for the new things. And when everybody Google stuff, it's become a verb, but I remember web crawler. Everybody's like, web crawler, what? Oh, I can find stuff online. Well, Google had a better search algorithm, and that's why we Google and we don't web crawl. And I have made a prediction, and people look at me like I'm crazy. My prediction is that ChatGPT is the web crawler of AI tools because there are so many new ones coming out that are so much easier to use, so much user friendly. Because I tried an experiment a couple of years ago with what I call the big three AI, which is ChatGPT, Google Gemini, which used to be Google Bard. I was a beta user of that. And then Copilot. And I asked all three of them the same question. What is Radio Free 501c? Google Gemini came back with a very professional response. It is a podcast and it talks about these topics for nonprofits. And Copilot came back with kind of a fun one, like, oh, it sounds like superheroes wearing their capes in their secret lair, ha ha. But no, here's what it really is, a podcast about nonprofit. ChatGPT said Radio Free 501c was an alternative music station and organized as a 501c3 organization. And I remembered what people told me. The thing about ChatGPT is you have to train it. You have to put a lot of effort into it. You got to put a lot of info in it and tell it what you want and train it and write all these things. I rephrased the question 5 times. I even told it at one point, no, it's a podcast. What can you tell me? And it kept coming back with the same exact answer. Now, okay, it was the free version. It wasn't the paid version. But that's why I'm thinking everybody latched onto that and put a lot of effort and money and time into it because somebody I talked to about it told me that. They said, I'm never going to stop using it because I've had to put too much time and effort into training it. Okay, I get that. But that's golden handcuffs. And we should be able to move from tool to tool as needed. And what I think we all need to do is find the AI tool that works best for us, for what we do. Like I have several friends who love Claude. And I was like, is Claude a new guy in the community? Oh, no, it's the AI tool. Oh, okay. So Claude is another one, a new one people really like. It's very user friendly. So I think as we're evolving with technology, a lot of these AI tools are going to fall away, just like all the other tech fell away when people quit using it. Anybody remember Lotus Notes?
And do your staff even understand any of this?
Mm-hmm.
No. And do your staff understand and your board that when you put something into any of these tools, is it, I teach at a post-secondary organization, and I always say to my students, verify, verify, verify. Just because one entity gives you that, is that the truth? And there's that caution. So again, we assume that people know this. And I find that people are embarrassed to admit they don't know in today's society because that's being vulnerable. And people don't like doing that. So you want to assume that people don't know and you want to educate them and bring them together.
Yes. Yes, I agree. Again, the power of the question. You don't have to talk to somebody like they don't know something, but you can just ask them if they do know it. Like you say, do you know what this is? And if they say yes, cool, you move on. If they say no, I really don't know what that is, and you say, oh, okay, well, let me show you.
And even
And
if they say yes, don't assume they say, ask more questions.
yeah.
How do you use it? And this is my other big thing with human connection is I'm a big believer in curiosity, and curiosity is not something AI does.
Mhm.
And humans are. And I think we're very judgmental. We very much have our opinions. There's groupthink. So when you're talking to someone, be curious, ask questions, and you have to dig deeper because if I say to you, how you doing? You're going to say fine, and I'm going to move on. Nobody's fine. Nobody. So always ask questions. And when someone says something that you're like, a good question I go is help me understand. Tell me more. I'm curious how you got there. Like, and so this is the other piece, if for the human connection, is like we said earlier in the conversation, asking people, how do you want to communicate? How do you want to get information? How do you want to use AI? Why do you think this tool is important? If we're saying as an organization we're using X and you want to use Y, let's have a conversation. But I think it's really about being curious and don't own your position, don't own your mindset, your beliefs so much that you're not open to learning from others.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Again, well said. I agree with that 100%. I don't know how the audience feels about that, but hopefully they're opening their minds a little bit and we'll keep that in mind because we are living very much right now in a world where it's you're with me or against me as opposed to what do you think? And I think if we could get back to what do you think or that's my opinion or just being open, you don't have to agree with a person. You can just say, oh, well, I don't agree with that, but it's giving me something to think about, or find a polite way to say I don't agree. Like the phrase that I like to use is, I'm going to push back on that a little bit, and here's why. And then I explain, and then they say what they want to say. And one time, just like about 6 weeks ago, somebody in a networking group used that phrase, and I was like, yes, I was going to push back on that a little bit. And that's fine because that's how we learn, friction, tension. It's friction makes things happen and tension holds things together. So they're not bad. We wouldn't have fire without friction and tension bridges wouldn't stay up without tension and neither would we because our muscles needed to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, well, this has been such a fun conversation to kick off season 8, Cynthia. Thank you so much for joining me. And I would like to ask you, what is the one thought, if there is just one? You've shared so many good thoughts today. What is the one thought you would like the audience to take away today, and how can they get in touch with you?
I would say don't get so overwhelmed by all the tools that are out there. I would say go back to the foundations. How am I showing up in the conversations I have with people? Am I being curious? How am I connecting with those around me? And then from there, we can look at the tools. And if anybody wants to, I've got tons of free resources on my website, lockreycommunications.com and Cynthia Lockrey on LinkedIn. That's where I go for my social media to connect with others. And so I'm always welcome to connect with new people.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Cynthia. And I would also like to mention to the audience, and please add some clarifying information. You also have some ebooks on Amazon. Is that correct?
I do. I have a whole series of ebooks on Amazon, on Kindle Unlimited, or you can buy on a variety of communications tools and self-growth and personal development. And they're a compilation of blogs and my own thoughts and an easy way for you to continue to grow yourself.
Oh, that's great. And I have read a lot of Cynthia's resources over the years since we've connected on LinkedIn. Because one day I read one of your articles and sent you a note, said, hey, I love this article. Want to be on my podcast? And you said yes. And the rest is history, as we like to say.
Absolutely. And that's what I love. I've worked with people from Australia, I'm in Canada, the US, France, and all from this technology we're using here and connecting on LinkedIn. So I welcome any new connections.
Excellent. And you can, as Cynthia said, easily find her on LinkedIn. So check out some of her blog posts and see what she's posting on LinkedIn. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you share with us about the course you're taking with the women in France.
Yes, I'm taking a clarity course, leadership course for women, and it ends with a week in Chantilly, France, a hard place to be in the spring.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Wish I could join. That sounds wonderful. Well, Cynthia, thank you again for joining me today and kicking off season 8.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm hoping that we'll see each other again in 2026.
We will. I am planning on it. So more to come on that. But we have to go rogue for now. We'll be back next time with another interesting, insightful, and maybe even exciting episode. So if you haven't subscribed or followed us yet on your favorite podcast service, please do. We're on all of them. We'd love to have you in our subscriber community. So please take a moment and do that if you haven't already. Also, if you would like to catch up on some of our past episodes, you can do that at our website, roguetulips.com, on our podcast page. And you can see what else we've been talking about in the last couple of years. We've really dived into a lot of good topics that are going to help you in 2026. If you want to see what's on my mind every week, which, frankly, I don't know what it's going to be most of the time either, check out my blog, Rogue Speak, and you can also sign up for my newsletter, my weekly newsletter, also called Rogue Speak, on our website. Now, most importantly, we would love to talk with you about how we could work with you and help your organization bloom outside the box. So check out our services page, and then let's have a conversation. If I'm not the right fit, I'll help you find the person who is. But let's talk. And in closing, if you are looking for ethics education or you're getting ready for the CAE exam in 2026, check out our education page. Our CAE prep course registration is already open, and our first ethics session will be in February. So check those dates and get registered now. So that's it for this week. On behalf of Cynthia and myself, we will see you next time. That's it for this week. I hope you really loved this episode as much as I did. Thanks for listening. Learn more about how our experience and knowledge at Rogue Tulips can give your organization the strategic edge to reach its goals. Check out our website at roguetulips.com. We'd love to talk with you and see how we can work together.